Roughing the passer has been around since 1938, but it's gone through a lot of changes over the years, which I'm going to break down into 3 separate eras. In the first era, when the rule was first created, the NFL wasn't just thinking about player safety. They were also thinking about entertainment. This was because in the 1920s and 30s, professional football was actually struggling to fill seats. Games at the time were typically boring to the casual fan. They usually involved 2 teams running the ball at each other for 3 hours straight. And this meant that low-scoring games and shutouts were extremely common. And while the forward pass already existed, the rules made passing the ball incredibly risky. Before 1933, the passer had to be at least 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage in order to throw, and incompletions could carry brutal penalties, including loss of down, loss of yardage, and even turnovers or touchbacks in certain situations. Most coaches treated the pass like hitting on your friend's mom. Sure, you absolutely could do it, but most of the time, the risk far outweighed the potential reward. Then in 1933, the league decided to loosen those restrictions, and they made it so that you could pass from anywhere behind the line. While that did open things up for the passing game, even with that change, most teams still didn't want to throw. On top of that, if your quarterback dropped back to pass, he was going to get absolutely mauled. Keep in mind, this was a time before hard helmets and much of the football gear that we consider standard today. There weren't many repercussions for hitting the passer long after the ball had left his hands. Getting lit up 3 seconds after you threw the ball was just another day on the job. So it's no wonder that many teams looked at that situation and decided that they'd probably be better off just running the ball. That was until 1937, when a guy named Sammy Baugh showed up in Washington and started slinging the rock like no one had ever seen before. And the league discovered that fans really enjoyed watching it. People were coming to Washington games just to witness this new, exciting style of offense. The NFL looked at what was happening and saw the potential answer to their attendance problems. Passing was entertaining, passing sold tickets, and they wanted to find a way to incentivize more passing across the entire league. The league needed to find a way to cut down on the amount of hits that QBs were taking after the ball was released in order to encourage more passing, which is exactly how roughing the passer was born in 1938. They introduced a 15-yard roughing the passer penalty, and the rule was so simple that even a caveman could understand it. Just don't hit the quarterback after he releases the ball. That was it. For the next 40 years, the league made small tweaks here and there, but the core concept of the rule stayed largely the same. And in that time, the passing game went from a gimmick to a foundation of football itself. Roughing the passer was working exactly as intended. For better or for worse, simple rules don't stay simple forever. Not in the NFL, at least. The second era of roughing the passer began in 1978. More passing around the league meant more hits on quarterbacks behind the line of scrimmage, and more hits, of course, meant more injuries. QBs were getting beat up every single Sunday, and the league once again felt like they needed to do something about it to keep the evolution of passing going. Before we get to the rest of the video, here's a quick word from today's sponsor. Troy claims that he's saving up for a new gaming PC, and his strategy for saving is to stop using electricity. Little does this poor idiot know, he could actually save hundreds of dollars by canceling all of the subscriptions that he forgot to cancel. Hey, you could save more money just by using Rocket Money. What's Rocket Money and how are you talking to me inside my own head? Shh, my sweet child. Just listen. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds subscriptions, lowers bills, and builds a custom budget so you don't have to live like a mole person. Whoa, you were actually right. It found everything. I can just actually cancel it all right here? Yes, Troy. With just a few taps, they can even negotiate your bills like your phone or cable to get you a better rate. This is way better than not using electricity. Now that the power's on, I can finally wash the underwear that I haven't washed in 13 days. Thanks, voice in my head. Everyone has subscriptions that they should have canceled a long time ago, including myself. Start saving more and spending less by joining the over 10 million members already using Rocket Money today. You can start taking control of your finances by scanning the QR code or clicking the link in the description to get started for free. Thank you to Rocket Money for being today's sponsor. Now back to the video. And in 1978, they introduced the in the grasp rule. The concept of it was actually pretty logical. If a quarterback was clearly wrapped up and controlled by a defender, referees were instructed to blow the whistle. Don't wait for him to actually hit the ground while 3 more players come in and give him the people's elbow. The new rule would actually end up being very controversial because it was notoriously hard to officiate. This was because when players like John Elway and Randall Cunningham came around, they weren't just pocket passers. They were athletes who could escape the rush and break tackles. And the new in the grasp rule was actually hurting their style of play. Refs were blowing plays dead the second that someone got a hand on these guys and killing any potential for an exciting scramble drill before they could even start. So in 1991, the league once again adjusted. They modified the in the grasp provision so that a play would only be whistled dead when they felt that the quarterback's safety was in jeopardy and not just because a defender got a hand on them. They would also make another addition in 1995. The league would end up adding something called a body weight provision. This was a completely new addition to roughing the passer. Up until now, the rule was mainly about late hits after the quarterback had already released the ball. But this new provision meant that you could get flagged even if you hit the quarterback on time if the hit was unnecessary and violent and you landed on him with all or most of your body weight. All three conditions had to be met in order for it to be a penalty, which is very different from today. By the mid-90s, roughing the passer had grown from a sentence or two in the rulebook to several paragraphs. Even with the modifications to the rule made at this point, I think most people would agree that these changes were reasonable and they made sense. Each change that had been made so far were direct reactions to how the game was evolving. The league was trying to protect quarterbacks and encourage passing without making it impossible to play defense. For better or for worse, that balance would start tipping in the favor of the offense in the coming years. The modern era has been shaped by three specific injuries to star quarterbacks. The first injury happened on January 8th, 2006, during the AFC wildcard game between the Bengals and the Steelers. On just the second defensive play of the drive, Carson Palmer dropped back and completed a 66-yard pass to Chris Henry. It was a great throw and a great play, but as Carson released the ball, Steelers defensive tackle Kimo von Oelhoffen dove at his legs and rolled into his left knee. Palmer's knee buckled and he tore his ACL, MCL, and PCL, and many feared that his career might be over. The NFL's response came in the form of a new rule in 2006. They made it illegal to hit the quarterback at the knees or below when the quarterback was in a defenseless position. This informally became known as the Carson Palmer rule, and just 2 years later in week 1 of the 2008 season, something very similar would happen again. Tom Brady would drop back and throw a pass to Randy Moss, and just before he released the ball, Chiefs safety Bernard Pollard got knocked to the ground by a blocker, and from his knees, he lunged at Brady's left leg. As we all know, Brady went down and tore his ACL and MCL. Bernard Pollard wasn't flagged because Tom still had the ball in his hands when he made contact, and that made him not a defenseless player in the NFL's eyes. But that type of hit wouldn't remain legal for very long because in 2009, the league once again added a new provision. A defensive player that falls to the ground can no longer lunge or dive at a quarterback's lower legs. For the next 8 years or so, the roughing the passer rules remained relatively unchanged until 2018, when another change took place as a reaction to an injury that Aaron Rodgers had sustained in the 2017 season. On the play that Rodgers was injured, he was rolling to the right and threw a pass when Vikings linebacker Anthony Barr wrapped him up and drove him into the ground and landed on top of him. Rodgers broke his collarbone and missed 8 games. The play was heavily scrutinized and reviewed, and it was ruled as a legal play. Barr didn't do anything wrong according to the rules at that time. The Packers and their fans understandably disagreed very loudly, and many around the league debated on whether or not the play was dirty. That offseason, the NFL went back to the rulebook. Remember earlier when we talked about the body weight provision where 3 things had to happen at once in order for roughing to be called? Well, the league actually took a look at that and changed that provision entirely. The new rule took those ands and turned them into ors. Now it was a penalty if it was unnecessary or violent or involved landing on top of the quarterback with their body weight, which meant that you only had to meet one of those conditions in order to draw a flag. The league also added new language telling defenders that they must strive to fall to the side of the quarterback's body or brace their fall with their own arms. And with that final change, that's where the rule has stayed ever since. In this video, we've seen how roughing has evolved over the past 80 years, and that's given us a lot of context on how we got to the current state of the rule. But we can't have a video about roughing the passer without talking about why the rule has become so controversial in the last decade or so. The simplest way that I can put it is that nobody really knows what the fuck roughing the passer truly looks like anymore. And I'm not even just talking about fans when I say that. I mean players, coaches, and sometimes it seems like even the referees themselves don't know what it truly looks like. The rule has so many subjective elements to it now that the same exact hit can be a penalty in one game and end up being a clean play in another. It depends on which ref is watching, what angle they had, and maybe even how they're feeling in that moment. If you've watched a lot of football over the years, I can guarantee that you've witnessed multiple instances where it looks like a guy makes a textbook sack, only to have that play turn into a 15-yard penalty and a first down for the offense. It's so bad that there are even compilations on YouTube of the worst roughing the passer calls, and some of them have millions of views. Before I give my opinion on roughing the passer as a whole, I want to preface everything I'm about to say with this. I fully understand how important quarterbacks are to the game. These are the faces of franchise and the guys who sell the most tickets, and they're the players that entire teams are built around. So I understand why it is that the rule came to be the way that it is. But my main problem with where the rule has ended up is that it's become almost impossible for defenders to know what's legal and what's not. I talked about this a little bit in my quarterback slide video, But let's think about what we're asking pass rushers to do. They can't hit the quarterback high, and they can't hit him low. So that already makes the target area of what a legal hit is relatively small when we're talking about a bunch of freak athletes moving around at full speed. And to add on top of that, they also can't truly commit to a tackle because if they do, and they end up landing on the quarterback with their body weight, that also triggers a flag. As a defender, you're somehow expected to redirect your 250 plus pound body mid-tackle and make sure you fall to the side or brace yourself with your arms, all while simultaneously trying to make a tackle and hope that none of what you did draws a flag. The league's filled with mobile quarterbacks now like Josh Allen, Lamar, Mahomes, and Bo Nix. These are athletes who can juke you out of your jockstrap, and some of them can run right through you. How in the world is a defender supposed to commit to tackling someone that's strong and elusive while simultaneously having to hold back for fear of landing on them in the wrong way? It's asking them to do something that goes against every instinct that they've ever developed as a football player and possibly goes against the laws of physics. Quarterbacks can run around and refuse to slide, and if they get hit hard, it ends up being the defender's fault for just trying to do their job. Normally, I'd offer some sort of solution because I do think that the rule needs to be simplified. It needs to be a little bit more black and white so it's easier to call for referees and so it's easier for fans and players to know what exactly roughing the passer looks like. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the answer for what that simplified rule would actually be. So I'm going to leave this video with an open-ended question. Do you think that there's a way to fix roughing the passer? Or is this just the cost of protecting the most important position in all of sports? Let me know what you think down in the comments. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy one of my other videos which I've put on screen right here. Don't forget to like or subscribe if you're feeling generous, and I will catch you all in the next one.